Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. Brought to you by Optical. In each episode, we bring together leading eye care, optical and business professionals to share valuable insights, practical tips, and the latest trends shaping the optical business landscape. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore innovative strategies for practice growth, patient care, and business success in the eye care industry. Whether you're starting your career, managing a practice, or just looking to stay ahead of the field, The Focused View is your source for inspiration and knowledge. Today we're excited to bring you a special episode recorded live at the Optipro Roadshow event in Sydney, the second stop of the Optipro Roadshow series. In this episode of the Elevate Your Practice series on The Focused View, we're joined as usual by Joanne Scott Dostine, where we'll dive into a topic that gets lots of attention: marketing. In particular, we'll take a look at practical marketing tips for optometry and optical dispensing practices. Whether it's improving your website's user experience, leveraging social media for better patient engagement, or enhancing your patient recall systems, we've got actionable insights for you in today's episode. So let's get into it. We're obviously thrilled to be doing today's episode live at the Optipro Roadshow event in Sydney. This episode is about practical marketing advice and tips for your practice and your optical store. As we get into it, Jo, welcome.
Thank you.
First question I want to speak about is regarding websites, I guess. So when we speak about marketing, there's obviously, online, there's traditional. We'll speak more about the online, but some aspects of traditional too along the way. But if we speak about websites in particular, what are some important things that a practice owner should consider or think about to ensure that their website is user-friendly, and why is that so important?
It's important because these days I think they say between 50 and 80% of people do research online first before they either go into a practice or they just go shopping. So if you actually don't have a website or it's not easy to use, it makes it harder for people to find you. So it's really important to have it. It's also important to make sure that it is mobile and tablet friendly, because most people use that these days. They'll use a laptop sometimes. Desktops are not used very much at all unless you're, in a store where you're working. But generally, it's all about mobility. The other thing I'd say, if you're looking at a website, is to make sure that it's easy to use and easy to find things. So it's often good just to get somebody that might be a family member or somebody that that you can just ask them. If you ask them to find something on your website, get them to do it and see how easy it is, because that practical use is really important. Sometimes we can build things. A lot of the time in optometry, we put lots of words and people find that really hard and they don't like it. They rather headings and simple lines to go and find the information. But it's really important that they can easily find what they're looking for. Otherwise, they jump off really quickly. So you'll get a really quick jump off rate and they won't move further in the website and come and find you.
Something that I think about when you just mentioned that was with reference to, I guess, the content that you've got on your website specifically. Have you seen in the past that people get overly technical for the most part, or are they not technical enough? What are your thoughts with regards to the sort of content you should be putting on your site?
Yeah, I think that we like to be technical. We're very technical people in our industry, so we actually like it. And optometrists in particular, because most practices are owned by an optometrist. They are usually the ones that will sign off on all the material on a website. And they do tend to like to give really long, good, in-depth explanations. But most people who go on and read it find it very hard to follow, and they don't want that information. They actually want something that's really simple. If they're looking for something for their kids, or if they're looking for something in particular like a product that you're carrying, they want to be able to navigate, find it really easily, have a bit of a heading that says there's a bit of information here, and then click through to the more depth if they want to read in depth. So home pages are really important to really guide people to where you want them to go and to find the additional information.
And if we look at some simple changes that one can make to a website in your experience, what are some of those more simplistic changes that can be made? Because obviously it is a website, it can be very large and I guess technical, but what are some simple changes that you think could be easily implemented based on what you've seen?
Pop-up screens are really good. So if you've got campaigns, have the information pop up so when people first go onto your website, they see it. Make sure information like their opening hours, a little bit about the team is really important. I think if you don't have many pictures about your practice or your team, that would be really good to put on there. People engage with people. They don't tend to engage with just a fashion image. They might like to look at it, but they'll engage and want to know more if it's more around people. And I think that just making sure that it is current, the information, make sure that you regularly update it and making sure that everything's easy to find. I think that's keeping it up to date that way.
Up to date is important. And I don't know how often we're all checking with our own websites. And when it comes to keeping it up to date, do you have a time frame in mind? Is it something that should be done, quarterly, annually, half yearly, 2 yearly? What are your thoughts on that?
Depends on what you're using it for. Because some of the like Google Analytics will look at things like how often you go on there, when you're changing the information. And if you really want to get higher up organically in the list for people to find you, if you work on your website really well, that actually helps you. So I think that's important. So I think if you're really looking at redesign, I'd probably say no more than 5 years for redesign. But if you're looking at just going on and checking information and updating and changing maybe the pop-up screen or hours, I'd probably do that. Just double check every month or two would be something I would do. Sometimes you miss things. I mean, we're doing that at the moment with ours because we've just changed all of our lenses. And every day, when we look up something, there's something else we might have not quite got right or missed because you make reference to so much. So if you make it really simple, the website, and easy to follow, it makes it easier for you to go back through and make sure that when you change one thing, it's easier to change the other things that relate to that as well.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I touch on with websites is a little bit of technicality with regards to the platform that you decide to build your website on. That can be a little bit audacious and probably, I guess I would imagine a lot of us here are outsourcing that. We've got a web developer or a web designer that's done it for us, and we probably don't know much about the systems that they're using and implementing. If there's one particular take home that I've got is just make sure that if you are getting a website developed, it is on something called WordPress. It's a little bit more advanced than your Wix and your Squarespace and all that sort of stuff. But with WordPress, there are a heap of developers worldwide, and you are able to enhance that particular website quite easily. So you're not locked in to say, again, not that I want to mention any businesses, but a lot of them do use proprietary software for the development systems. And so you're locked into them. And if you do that, well, when you need to take it away or move it away, it can be problematic. And we do get that quite a bit with regards to the challenges. So I know whenever we've been a part of development websites, it's always making sure that it's on an open source technology, that you are able to access multiple developers and you're not limited to a particular agency.
Even just simply signing on, to go on and do something. If you do sign up with an agreement like that, you don't have access to anything. Every single thing you want done, you have to go to them and you have to pay them and you have to get them to do the work. So just be really mindful when you're signing up for things.
Yeah, cool. Anything else on websites before we jump on to the next?
I would just say that websites are really important. Place a lot of emphasis on it. They are your conversion tool, and everything else you do should go back to that. So if you're doing social media and you're doing, other advertising, even on social media, a link to the website so people can find it. And then having a really good banner that doesn't move with the opportunity to make an appointment should be really bold and bright at the top, because that's your call to action. That's what you want people to do when they're coming on your website.
You mentioned social media. It's interesting to always see when we look through websites and we click on the, the Instagram logo or the Facebook logo or the LinkedIn logo, sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. With regards to social media, I guess the website's an important part. What sort of posts do you think resonate best with patients? And what's the difference between, I guess, Facebook or Instagram for the point of view of optics?
I think a lot of people just use the same thing and post across both, but they actually are different platforms and have different purposes. Facebook, there's some stats in your book which are really interesting. It's the third highest trafficked site that there is after Google and YouTube. So it's actually quite massive. And in Australia, the average Australian gets onto social media for about 2 hours a day. So you have that opportunity to actually get people. I think the way that people engage, Facebook is more about community and people you know. So usually when people want to follow you, it's because they know you. Generally, they don't go looking for somebody and then ask to, be a friend. And for most businesses, they have to actually come into your business before they actually ask to follow you. Where Instagram's a little bit different. Instagram's really about fashion. It's about pictures, where Facebook's more about words and stories. So for Instagram, you can go down a real rabbit warren. If you start looking at Instagram, you look at one thing, you just start going down and you go through so many different sites and, and pages. So people really on there like fashion. I think the brand return is a lot higher on Instagram for people who are looking at brand options than what Facebook is. But Facebook's really good for putting things up about your team. So little things like celebrating somebody's birthday, somebody's picking up glasses, somebody's getting glasses for the first time. They love that. That's the thing that you'll get the most likes on. If you put technical things on Facebook, you'll be lucky if you get a couple of likes on it, because people look at it and they look at the fashion stuff. They don't really do much about it, but it's the stuff that engages them is about the team and about the people that you have in your practice.
And the biggest thing I think that we see in Facebook in particular, and I guess we're all privy to it because I'm sure we're all part of the same relevant industry group, is the groups on Facebook are really, really big. So whether you're part of a local area's mums group or a cooking group, or you tend to find that I think Facebook's biggest traction in the last couple of years has been in the group space. And so we're all, I guess we've had some experience with that in that regard. So I feel like that's another part too. So it's very often I'd see, I live in the inner west of Sydney, and so I know that there's a group there called the Inner West Mums, and I know that there's always recommendations and referrals for optometrists there, and you tend to see that people are in that, and that gets a bit of traction. And I guess how you would access that is another question, but I think that's another big thing I see with Facebook with regards to its movement and development, which is becoming, I guess, really, really big.
Definitely. I think if you really want to look at how people actually research, and when you were talking about mums, often when people move into an area, it tends to be mum more than dad generally. The first place they ask at is school. So they ask the other mums to find out the information. The next thing they do is they tend to go on Facebook and have a look and see what information you've got on there. Then they'll go onto your website. They want to know a little bit about you because they want to know that they're engaging with somebody that's going to be, good for their family. But they do a lot of research before they actually come into you. So if you're not on those places, you won't be seen.
All right. This wasn't on the run sheet, but I'm going to throw it in there because I think it's part of the research. Reviews. What are your thoughts on reviews, and how would a practice best approach that? Because I guess it's social awareness, or it's social proof, as opposed to being, say, social media per se.
It's really hard because we have rules with APRA about what we can and can't do, right, in optometry. So I think for Facebook, it's something you can't really go out and ask too much about. It's got to be a little bit more organic. I think the allowance is a little bit more on Google reviews because you can't change them. On Facebook, you have control of what sits there, so you can take things out and you can, adjust things where on Google you can't. I feel that it's something that you probably, should be trying to do. There's a lot of people on their websites that will actually have testimonials on there from people that have done a review on Google for them. So, if you're talking to somebody and they really love what you do, there's no harm in chatting to them. Just got to be a little bit mindful of it with the way that people link things.
What sort of content do you think stores should be focusing on when they're putting up content on their Facebook pages or Instagram pages?
I think if you use it the way it sort of works now, putting somebody in charge is really good in the store, but it can't be with just one person because it's a big job. I think that you've got to have time to plan and book things in. I think if you're looking at Facebook, I'd be talking to every patient who's picking up glasses to see if they're comfortable to have their picture taken. Every time, a kid is picking up glasses, because they're great news stories. If there's an optom that has a really interesting case in the room and then they've got these really great glasses and people are really happy, put a little bit of a story up. That's the stuff that people love. You can't tag them though, so you'll be mindful of that. You're not allowed to tag them, but you can tell them when it's going to be on. And then if they tag other people, that's actually okay. They're actually okay to come on and like it and, and suggest other people look at it. Yeah, so I think that's for Facebook. I think for Instagram, that's more when you would use the suppliers' information as well, because they have great images for fashion. So for Instagram, I'd be probably putting up a little bit more fashion stuff. And if you want to do it with your team, if there's new products that come into the store, take pictures of the team wearing them and showcasing that product. Maybe get yourself a white box that doesn't have any shadow that you can actually take really good photos of, and then use that imagery for Instagram. And hashtag the life out of it. Hashtag the supplier, hashtag everything that you want to, hashtag the word glasses. It'll go to, there's millions of people that use that, so you could end up anywhere. So hashtag it.
I like the idea that you mentioned about staff and putting staff on there, because you're kind of getting two birds with one stone there, because you also allowing the community to learn more about your staff and more about the team. So it's almost
Absolutely.
Like the meet my team concept.
Yeah.
So as well as promoting your eyewear, I guess you're also promoting your team. And so,
well, on Facebook, it's a good way to do it. When you've got somebody new, it's great. I mean, if you did once a week, did a story on somebody in the team and then you rotated that, that's great. If you've got a new optom that comes on and you've got an existing optom that everyone loves to see and you want to build up the awareness of the new Optom, you can actually go and take pictures of them, down the road at the local coffee shop. You can actually go down to a shop and introduce them to people. You can do like a Where's Wally thing with your new Optom so people are seeing them all the time and build up the awareness of them by actually showcasing them quite a bit.
Something that comes to mind now is obviously that all this discussion, obviously I'm sure we're all having thoughts and it's like, oh, it's so easy to do. It's just something that, take the Optom down and to the coffee shop and take some photos and I can post that. But it's always good an idea, but then the reality of it coming out, it doesn't actually happen. When it comes to the deliverable of, posting, do you think it's best that that's done in-house, or is it best to outsource that to make sure that it gets done? And what are your thoughts on who should be the person responsible for actually posting?
I think that depends on yourself and if you've got the ability to do it. If you get somebody else to do it, they'll be great at all the clinical stuff and the fashion stuff. They'll be able to research and help you. But if you're having to take photos in-house of customers and of the team, you need somebody that's going to do that. So I would say if that's the focus that you're going to do, just get everyone in the team really comfortable with asking everyone, get a library of images that you can pull from to use. And if you're going to get somebody else to do it for you, just make sure you make them really aware of what you want to try and achieve. And I would say plan it. Using a calendar or something and plan it out so you're actually booked well in advance. If you really want it to grow, because it's a really slow thing to grow and build your numbers, 2 to 3 posts a week is a good number to do. And every now and then do a like option where you actually give away something, where you have some sort of competition where people like what you've posted, but then, tag somebody in it so that they're following you and there's more traction because more people on their reel will see it as well, because you want to get as many people as you can to see it.
Yeah, I think planning's critical. There are heaps of tools online that enable you to basically do all of this in one moment. So you should maybe put away 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week to actually create the posts, load them up, and then actually have them just, come out in due time. So it can all be done at one moment. You don't have to do it at 3 individual times of the week. It can be all done at one, and you might even do a month in advance as well. So you could plan a month's worth of content too in 1 or 2 hours. So I think looking at tools like that will definitely be beneficial in that regard.
And look at your analytics. If you want to know when the best time is to post for Facebook, you can actually access your analytics page and it'll tell you. I mean, if you're trying to get the families at night, they're not going to look at anything after about 7 in the morning because they're getting their kids ready for school. So you've got to get them earlier. They might look again at lunchtime and then they probably will look again around 8 o'clock at night. So make sure you're posting at the right time to suit the audience that you're trying to reach as well.
Yeah, interpreting the metrics of the social media engagements, probably an episode on that in its own right too, which we can maybe touch on a little bit later. Okay, so if we jump to something a little bit different, but I know all relevant and definitely something we've all had experience with, patient recalls, obviously a really critical part of marketing. Whether we view it as that or not, I'm not too sure, maybe more of a business process. When it comes to patient recalls, they're obviously critical for keeping patients coming back. In your opinion, what's the simplest way for a practice to remind patients when they're due for an eye test?
One of the things that is really good to do is actually have a conversation at the end of the eye test where you talk about a health plan and you talk about the need to have regular eye examinations and talk to people. When they come in, when you do your welcome to practice form or you're actually just talking to them when they come in, ask them the best way that they want to be contacted and then use that. When you're doing your recalls, make sure you segment it out so that you're not sending the same way to everyone if they've asked not to be sent that way. You'll find that there's, certain parts of the community, like people who are over a certain age that still love to get a letter. For most people, SMSs are really good. Emails are starting to become stronger again. For a while, people hated them because they were getting so many and they had to keep unsubscribing to everything. But because we're moving to SMS a lot, people are using emails a lot. So I think build a plan and even pre-appoint people if you can. So for the short testing time, so if it's only a 3 or 6 month, pre-appoint them. I know in a previous role I had, there was a practice in another state who pre-appointed everyone, including their 2-year tests, and they had one of the highest recall success rates I've ever seen because they actually use that as their whole process. But every time they did a test, they talked to people about it, and they had a really good process that contacted people with a reminder 2 weeks before they were due in 2 years, and the success was much higher.
Do you think it's important that you adopt a uniform communication, strategy with all your patients, or should you try and obtain or understand the method that they prefer to communicate with and stick to that?
Well, I think that you're a bit limited when you do SMS because there's usually only a certain amount of characters you can use depending on the platform. So I think that's a little bit more limited. And then with your recalls, I think it's good to try and change them every now and then. I will tell you that I did work for a big retail business, and each month when we sent out the recalls, there was probably 2 or 3 types that we sent, and we regularly changed those because we wanted to trial all different types to see what worked the best. So I would, sometimes you want to put something in there about maybe new technology, maybe something about new lenses. It could be, an offer for them to come in. Try different things is what I would say to see what engages people.
And I guess similarly to the social media posting, obviously someone's got to do it. What are your thoughts on it being outsourced? We obviously, we've actually done an episode 8, I think it was, with Fatin from Eye to Eye Marketing, who offers this type of service. But what are your thoughts in general? Is it better that a store does it, or at what point should a store determine that, hold on, we can't do it, let's outsource it? And what's that process look like?
Well, I think there's a few different types of recalls that we're looking at. So you're looking at your standard recall, which is we're due for an eye test and we're going to send it out. And then you've got things like lapsed patient recalls where people haven't been in for 2 to 4 years. That's a little bit different. The external companies are really good at that sort of stuff. They're really good at calling people. In your own practice, if you want to do phone calls as recalls, most of the team don't want to do it. They don't feel comfortable. It's like a cold call and they just don't feel good about it. So it's really hard to train them up. But the people who do it externally, they do it all the time. And I think like Eye to Eye Media have something like 16 or 18 people doing it all the time. And they've got a really good rate of how many people they book in for you. So you can, manage that. And they're people that you wouldn't have had sometimes, especially if it's the second or third bite of the cherry. I think that you really need to consider not just doing once. So consider what your plan is. So if you send the recall out and then you wait 2 weeks and then you wait another 2 weeks, maybe try a different method. So if you did the first round and it was a certain way, it was the way that the customer wanted it, and that didn't work, maybe try it a different way the next time. And then if you're doing lapsed, I would say trial different offers because you've already lost them. If they haven't been in that 2 to 4 year period, you've probably lost them. So the opportunity to get them back in may come with some sort of offer or something to enhance, to engage them and get them back in.
Yeah, I think it's pretty powerful. I mean, like you mentioned, these guys are doing it day in, day out. I guess, telephone mannerisms and the way that you communicate on the telephone is a particular style of communication. And when you're doing it all the time, you're obviously going to be a lot better at it. And I think that these companies that do that have that benefit. So I can see some value in that.
The other thing is how busy you are. I think that if you just standardly do your recalls when they're due and you're a busy practice, you could annoy some of your customers because if they ring up and they've got to wait a month to see you, they're going to be a bit annoyed. So I would say if you're a busy practice, I would manage that quite well and send it out when you need to. But I would also consider looking at some appointment book management where you do things like not fill your book fill it up every day, where you assign certain time slots or you leave some space once you send out the recalls. Manage it to suit what your business needs are as well.
Yeah. If we, again, pivot and start to look at some marketing strategies on a more general, I guess, context, we've spoken about the concept of planning and calendars. But I guess when it comes to mapping that out for a year or a time frame, it's obviously going to be overwhelming, especially for a small practice or a medium-sized practice that has a million and one things to do. What do you think is a good starting point for practices when they begin to create a marketing calendar, and what sort of things should they consider?
Keep it simple, I would say. A lot of people will use a marketing calendar that is massive and it has all sorts of things in it and it's really hard to navigate. If you just make it really simple, and I think for the people who are here, we've actually got something in the book for you. But if you keep it simple where you actually put the 12 months down the side and then you put a focus in, think about what the focus is going to be. In May, it might be Mother's Day, for instance. In November, it might be sunglasses or end of year health fund. Start to map that out and then look at what you want to try and achieve. And then I would just have maybe 4 or 5 columns that cover social media, what you're going to put on your website, if you're going to do any other sorts of advertising, what sort of training you require, what sort of resources you require, if you're going to have an offer and what the costing looks like. If you put all that and map it all out, then you can go to your suppliers. So if let's say you're doing a sunglass promotion, say November, at the beginning of the year when you set it up, you can actually go to your supplier that you want to do the sunglass promotion with and say, we're going to do this. Would you like to be part of it? Before it comes along, can I get imagery off you and, and work and use that for what I'm using on my social media, the posters I'm using and what I put in store?
Yeah, I guess having the suppliers on board in that regard and they're all willing to be involved, I think is key. And simple is also important. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It can just be a Word document with the months mapped out, and then just start from there. Whatever software that you're comfortable to use, I think that's the best way to do it too. You don't want to be using another system that you're not comfortable with. If it's just a Word doc, it doesn't matter. It could be, would you recommend a note, writing it down with,
I write everything down. Anyone in the room now who knows when I've come and seen them, and Nick and Angela who are sitting here from the Alternates, they know I bring a book and I write it all down. My team know. The BDMs that I work with, they know that. I actually write everything down. I like having it written down. If that's the form that works for you, write it down. If you're somebody that doesn't like paper and you want to use technology, use technology. Yeah. Make it simple for you.
That's it. The point is whatever works, right? That's the main thing that it's done. All right, so if we speak, and just wrapping it up now, I guess from our point of view, before we throw it out to some possible questions, what are some simple, cost-effective ways that practices can market themselves without spending too much money, but still make an impact?
I think the visual impact of your store is really important. I would say once a quarter, walk the walk of your customer. Walk from the front to the back. A lot of us will come in a back door. We're going when the lights are off. We don't look at everything. Walk from the front to the back, because visually, especially the younger market these days, they actually won't walk in a store unless it looks good to them. So it doesn't matter how good the product is inside. If the outside doesn't attract them, they're not even going to walk in your door. So make sure that everything looks really good. Check for things like little spider webs. You might have a few flies in the window that you've not seen. Make sure that all the gaps are full. So just make sure everything looks really good inside. Being as sparse as you can is really good. If it's too cluttered, people don't like it. Social media is a good way of doing it, because social media doesn't cost you anything except for your time. But reach out and talk to your suppliers and make sure you include all your customers so that you can actually get some really good posts that are going to engage people. Look at the things that you've got inside that talk about the products that you have. I think what's really interesting in our industry is, for most practices, about 40% of what you sell is your lenses. But if anyone walked in the store, most of you wouldn't have a thing about your lenses in the store. You might have a image here and there, or you might put something up, but we actually don't showcase our lenses. Same with contact lenses. Contact lens sell-through rate is like 3 to 5% in most practices. It's really, really low. But if people walk in your store, they wouldn't even know you sell contact lenses. And not everyone understands that the two go together either. So we might know that it does and know that all optoms have the ability to sell it, but the patients don't know that. So make sure that you have things like that people can easily see. So do things internally that help. And even get your team to repost and to like things, because the more they like what you post and the more they repost, the more people see it in the feeds as well.
Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that as well, I believe, because, and it's probably a longer conversation, is identify what makes your practice unique. And I'd say push that. And that can come in the way of niche. So if you're, a practice that's behavioral in nature, or if you focus on dry eye, or you're focusing on myopia management, I think if you've identified with a particular category or a niche that is important to you, that's also a way to market too. That's a little bit different to a general optical post, I guess, or a general eyewear post. And then obviously that will show like the practice in a few different ways. And it's not to say that you're not going to get the general market too, but it just identifies you as being something unique, back to your core point of difference from the practice. And I think that coupled with what you've mentioned could be really powerful. Well, I guess from that point of view, just to wrap it up then, Joe, assuming there aren't any questions, what are some of the main questions that you get, or that you sometimes see that perhaps we haven't discussed when it comes to marketing? Or is there anything that I guess you feel like we haven't touched on, just to wrap it all up?
The main things are, we've covered a lot of it, is website and, how to use it. Something that people often miss when they talk about, being seen on the internet when people are Googling them, is to actually own your Google business page. So if you don't know what that means, it means that when you go searching for somebody and you see that little bit on the right-hand side that shows you where that person is, that practice is, or that business is, there's lots of information there. You need to go in and own that. And if you actually go in there and post and adjust it and show that you're logging into that regularly, that helps the algorithm as well. So a lot of people ask me the best ways to get themselves organically up the list. That's it. I would go and do that. A lot of the time it's the difference between Facebook and Instagram. People want to know that. And as I said before, the simple thing is it's, like community, people and words is the easiest way to say Facebook. And then Instagram is about imagery, branding, and really high-res good imagery is what people like. It's what attracts them. They like the pretty stuff on there and less words. If you're going to boost something on Facebook, a lot of people just pick what they're going to boost. I would say to you, look for something that has got really good likes. So if you've posted something and it's got really good likes, you know that the people who are following you like it. Consider boosting that rather than boosting something for scratch that you're unsure of. And when you're advertising and you're boosting on Facebook or Google, especially Facebook, make sure that you've got a certain amount of followers, because generally only about 5% of your followers will see a post from you generally organically when you're posting something. And unless they have seen or like something recently, they're not going to see it. So if you're going to, do advertising, then make sure that you've got enough people as well, because if you don't have many, it's not going out to many people. Or if you're going to go and do it, make sure you pick a really good segment by looking at analytics and then considering the people around your area. So I think advertising is the other thing that they asked me about.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks for that. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for all the insights. Thanks, guys, for participating and joining in. It's been a pleasure. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Focused View, proudly presented by Opticare. It's been our privilege to share the insights and stories that resonate deeply with the eye care community. We hope today's episode has not only inspired you, but also armed you with the practical strategies and innovative ideas to help you enhance your practice and professional journey. If you found value in our conversation, we'd be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. And share this episode with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals like you and grow our community of visionaries. Stay connected by subscribing to The Focused View and visiting our website www.thefocusedview.com.au for additional resources and episode summaries. We look forward to your company again in our next episode. Until then, keep focused. I'm Michael Nasser. Bye for now.